friends, welcome to Creeps and Creeps. My name is Cece Delaney, and today we are going to be talking about the case of the Jersey Devil, one of the weirdest cryptids, and also apparently the only nationally recognized state demon in the country. I have officially given up on my intro, story, imagine, mood setters after 6 episodes because people stopped listening after about 1 minute, and it was really hurting my feelings. So we're giving up on that, okay? Sorry. Not sure if you enjoyed it, but you're apparently part of the minority. So if you're in the future listening to this and you did enjoy it, let me know. If a lot of people, if the majority changes, I'm willing to shift, pivot, and do what you guys want. But as far as it goes, for now, until anyone says anything, we're just gonna stick with plunging right into the story. But first, if you're new here, welcome, and I hope that by the end of this episode, you enjoy the content enough to leave a like or a rating if you're listening as a podcast. 5 stars, obviously, being the most helpful of ratings. I also hope that you feel compelled to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you're streaming your podcasts. I am currently in the process of building a communicative creepy crew, which means any questions, comments, concerns, they're all welcome and encouraged in the comment section on YouTube or the related Instagram post. Without further ado, let's just get into this. Also, this one's probably going to be egregiously short, so I guess it's your lucky day if you hate the long episodes. Woo! The story of the Jersey Devil starts all the way back in the early 1700s. There was a young woman named Deborah Smith who immigrated from England to America in search for a better life, and she ended up marrying a man known as Daniel Leeds. They had a cozy home together in New Jersey Pine Barrens, which later ended up being called Leeds Point, and in this place, they set their roots and started creating their dream life and family. Within a few years, Mrs. Leeds had produced 12 children, and unfortunately, an absent alcoholic husband. Things quickly fell from the American dream to a destitute family, and with 12 kids to care for, Deborah was really not thrilled when she found out that there was a 13th baby coming along. They could barely keep food on the table as it was, and now here she is, 13 baby, coming in hot. Out of frustration, she cried, "Let it be the devil," and a few months later, she actually just warmed up to the idea. She was like, haha, just kidding, babies, ee! And she ended up being pumped. Well, maybe not pumped, but she ended up being okay with the idea of having a 13th baby. By the time she had this baby, she had completely forgotten about the self-imposed curse. And when she went into labor, it was a very stereotypical dark and stormy night. Local midwives came to offer assistance to Deborah, and everybody was just crammed into this really tiny little house, including the 12 children, in anticipation for the new life. The birth went smoothly with no apparent complications or defects, and Deborah held her sweet little baby boy close, and as most mothers do, looks directly into his eyes and gushes over her sweet child that just came into the world. That did not last long, because right before her eyes, the baby started to morph into a hideous creature. His cries turned into growls, and talon-like claws ripped through his fingertips. His once baby blue eyes began to glow bright red, and his smooth skin became covered in hair and feathers. Wings sprang from his back, and horns grew from his skull, and his once chubby, sweet face stretched to look like a horse's. The baby leapt out of his mother's arms, mangling her and the midwives, his father, and all 12 siblings, and then flew out of the chimney, nary a care in the world, heading into the surrounding pines. For the next 250 years, this creature has been blamed for the torment of the southern part of New Jersey, killing livestock and being just a general nuisance to the area. There are also a few other stories that came to fruition, like Mother Leeds was a witch and she had a child with the devil himself. Or a really depressing theory was that the baby was deformed, and everybody without any sort of medical knowledge or basis at the time just assumed that that baby was not of this world and was the devil. Over the years, the Jersey Devil picked up a few nicknames like the Wazzlebug and Hoodle Doodle Bird, which I thought was very funny, and so I really wanted to mention it. I just had to find a way to work it in. Most people describe him as looking strikingly like a winged kangaroo with cloven hooves, bat-like wings, and a forked tail. I'll put up a picture. And if you're streaming this as a podcast, just look up the Jersey Devil. It looks exactly as I described it. Several sightings have circulated over the years, like Commodore Stephen Decatur, who tried to shoot the devil down with a cannonball. Despite a direct hit, according to him, the devil was unaffected and flew off. There was also a week-long streak in January of 1909 that was the most active time ever recorded of Jersey Devil sightings and chaos. Sighting number 1. He was spotted in Bristol Pen by several witnesses, was shot at by a cop named Jack Saxville, but he actually ended up missing, and locals found strange hoof prints, but there was no explanation. And I just really want to know, like, what constitutes as a strange hoof print? I don't know. If you have any ideas, please let me know in the comments or Instagram post related to this episode, because what the hell is a strange hoof print? That same night, the Loden family heard heavy trampling all over their backyard and something trying to bust down their door. They said that the sound circled their house and continued to scrape at all of the doors, and they found their garbage cans tipped over with the same strange hoof prints scuffled about it, and the trash was half eaten. It's so interesting because only a few yards were left untouched by the hoof prints. These little hoof prints left marks going up trees and bouncing around surrounding yards and skipping from roof to roof before eventually just disappearing as if it had flown away. There were dogs that were brought in to try and hunt down the hoodle doodle bird, but apparently they were like, hell no, dude, I'm not following that, and they refused to follow the trail of the Jersey Devil. There were men who were also super ballsy and followed the tracks about 4 miles, but they suddenly just dropped off again as if he had just flown into the abyss. Around 2 a.m. that day, a man and his wife were awoken to find the Jersey Devil on the roof of their shed, and they said that they watched it just stomping around up there for like 10 minutes. They described him as, quote, about 3.5 feet high with the face of a collie and the head of a horse. It had a long neck, wings about 2 feet long, and the back legs were like those of a crane, and it had horse hooves. It walked on 2 hind legs and 2 short front legs with paws on them. The same night, Councilman E.P. Whedon of Trenton claimed to have been awoken by flapping wings outside of his bedroom window, and he said that he found cloven hoof prints in the snow, and several other instances of similar footprints were reported in Trenton at the same time. During this little stretch in 1909, it's rumored that the Philadelphia Zoo posted a $10,000 award for the capture and subsequent handing over of the creature, which then prompted a bunch of tricksters to try and go ahead and produce their own version of the Jersey Devil, including a kangaroo that had artificial claws and bat wings strapped to its back. However, these sightings are not exclusive to the 1909 episode, and in 1951 in Gibbstown, a, quote, bloody-faced devil shocked a 10-year-old boy, and when the posse tried to hunt the creature down, they failed. Witnesses did describe it as a hairy man towering over 7 feet tall, so it really could have just been like a guy living in the forest freaking kids out for fun. There was another instance where a dog owner in Camden hears his dog just losing its marbles outside, freaking out. It sounds like it's being attacked. Well, not really a plot twist, but it was. The owner looks outside and the dog is just in the mouth of some creature in the backyard. And so the owner goes rip-roaring out, broomstick in hand, ready to start beating this thing, but it ended up disappearing and flew over a fence and had torn a chunk from the dog's flesh. The dog is fine. For anyone who's worried, the dog is okay. This is a lot of hearsay. There's not a lot of like concrete evidence. It's a lot of witness statements and testimonies. But obviously the scientific community is going to get involved in this and they are going to have some theories. So a historian of science at Keene University named Brian Regal had his own theory that the Jersey Devil never actually existed and that he was just a story that was produced during political tensions between Ben Franklin and Franklin's rival at the time, an almanac publisher named Daniel Leeds, the Daniel Leeds of the Leeds Devil and Leeds Forest. Apparently, due to this tension, the Leeds family began being described as quote-unquote monsters, and it was Daniel Leeds' negative description as the Leeds Devil. So maybe it was just misconstrued. People were pissed off at Daniel, but for whatever reason, it just got mangled into being this horrifying dog snatcher. Basically, it kind of seemed like people were just mad because the Leeds published an almanac in 1687 with astrological symbols and writings, God forbid. But this was in 1687. So, witchcraft and wizardry in the stars? No, ma'am. Not in that puritanical society. This caused Daniel to be ostracized by his Quaker congregation after they deemed astrology and the almanacs as too pagan or blasphemous, and the almanacs were actually censored and destroyed by the local Quaker community. The Quakers just assumed that Daniel was evil, and he was willing to stir the pot. He did not care. And he played into their staunch skepticism, and eventually converted to Anglicanism and published anti-Quaker tracts criticizing Quaker theology and accusing the Quakers of being anti-monarchists, which was a big old no-no at the time. Further, Leeds was endorsed and counseled by a guy named Lord Cornbury, who was a British royal governor of New Jersey Jersey, and he was already deemed as problematic to the Quakers and was despised among the Quaker community. I really couldn't figure out why. I just know they did not like him, and Daniel liked that about him, it seems. Considering Leeds as a traitor for aiding the crown and rejecting Quaker beliefs, the Quaker Burlington meeting of southern New Jersey subsequently dismissed Leeds as quote-unquote evil. In 1716, Daniel Leeds' son, named Titan Leeds, inherited his father's almanac business and sense of chaos. Leeds continued to include astrological content and went on to compete with Ben Franklin's popular Poor Richard's Almanac. In 1733, kind of as a clapback, Franklin satirically used astrology in his almanac in order to predict that Titan Leeds would die in October of the same year. Titan was pissed and marked Franklin as a quote-unquote fool and liar, which only caused Benjamin to mock Titan Leeds' outrage. He made jokes that even though Titan was still alive, he had died in accordance with earlier predictions and was writing the almanacs as a ghost in order to torment Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin was really spicy, it turns out. Did not know that. Franklin could not let well enough alone, and even after Titan had died, he said, "No, I won't have chill, so sorry," and even continued to jokingly refer to Titan as a ghost after Titan had died in 1938. So because of Daniel Leeds' blasphemous occultist reputation and his pro-monarchy stance in the largely anti-monarchist colonial South of New Jersey, this may have led to the legends of the Jersey Devil, and it did not help that Titan Leeds began to include the Leeds family crest on the masthead of the almanacs once he took over the publishing that just so happened to look just like the Jersey Devil. Look it up, it's crazy. Naturally, there are going to be skeptics that believe the Jersey Devil to be nothing more than just a creative manifestation upon the imaginations of early English settlers, which is kind of interesting because it's like, well, this wasn't all from English settlers. Like 1909, we were not early English settlers. We were very well settled and wreaking havoc on America at that time. So I'm not really sure what excuse we can give those people, but I will throw that excuse to the early colonizers. It's also possible that the Jersey Devil is literally just a sandhill crane. Anyway, that's really it from me today, guys. Like I said, this one's pretty short, but if you're interested in more of these cryptids across America, you just let me know if you want to hear about a specific one. You leave it in the comments on YouTube or on the related Instagram post over at Creeps and Creeps Podcast. I do read the comments, the good, bad, ugly, constructive, so please don't really be afraid to use your voice. Is it a sandhill crane? Is it just people being super rude to the Leeds who had different quote-unquote occultist beliefs at the time? Is the Jersey Devil among us? You let me know what you think. If you are currently streaming this as a podcast, please consider throwing a rating my way with 5 stars, again, obviously being the most helpful, and subscribe to the show wherever you're listening. You can email me directly at creepsx2@gmail.com or D-mail me. Please don't send me D-mail. DM me on Instagram at Creeps and Creeps Podcast if you would like to suggest a case or just shoot the shit. If you're ever curious about my sources, they'll be linked in the show notes or on the associated blog post to each episode, which you can find over at creepsandcreeps.com. Until next time, keep those sweet little noggins on a swivel, and please just try to stay safe out there, okay? Avoid sandhill cranes and kangaroos cosplaying as the Jersey Devil at all costs, okay? Bye!